Life show. I am so excited that you clicked play on this episode. I have a wonderful guest for you to listen into, and listen till the end because afterwards I'll come back on and share my two big takeaways and really inspiration for you if you're listening to this live time in 2025, because this conversation was great. So who is on the show, Susie? I will let you know. Her name is Amy Cannell, and she is a weight neutral certified personal trainer who wants you to take a rest day, and a nutrition coach who wants you to enjoy dessert. I thought she'd be good to have on the show, eh? Okay. She helps women feel and function well in simple ways so they can fulfill their purpose. She's the host of a Graced Health podcast. She's the author of some great books, one called Your Worthy Body and one called Your Core Strength. She lives in Houston, Texas, the area of Houston, Texas, with her husband and their pit bull named Grace. She has two college-age sons, and they regularly talk about how much money they save on groceries with both of the boys out of the house. So you will love this conversation. And again, listen until the very end because I share some big takeaways that will make this all actionable for you. Let's go, Warriors. Hello and welcome, Amy, to the Love Your Life show. I am so excited that you are here with us today.
Thank you, Susie. It's so fun to see your face after hearing you on so many episodes.
So fun. I feel the same way because you have an amazing podcast too that we'll be sharing with the listeners at the end of this podcast. I wanted to have you on right now. If people are listening live time, it is the beginning of a new year. It's when a lot of us have goals and ideas and all sorts of, we're all like eager. Yay, let's do it. And your particular expertise and genius zone is around food and helping us feel, really coming to a more healthy relationship with that. And that is really what I have found ease with in my later life. I'd say that I'm still striving towards it. There's still work to be done after 40, 50 years of conditioning.
Yes.
I'm just really excited to have you come on today to talk about some of the food struggles and help us feel a little more compassion towards ourselves and if food is a relationship, to feel more peace in that relationship. So could you just give a brief background of how you got into doing this work and helping people in this way?
Absolutely. I actually grew up dancing. I grew up moving my body, and that continued into young adulthood. And when I had my youngest son, I ended up getting into more of the group fitness, and leading that. So actually, yes, I do focus on food. I do focus on nutrition, but I would say my bread and butter and what I really grew up doing was moving my body.
Mm.
My history is of moving it way too much, using my body to exercise off all of the calories that I had
Mhm.
ingested, and had a really poor relationship with how I treated my body and what I expected it to do. Um, in the process, I also just loved learning about nutrition science. I loved learning about how food impacts us. I had a child with some just minor health issues, and I had to kind of change up his diet. And so I started really learning how all of that impacted. That turned into a bit of an obsession. That turned into a lot of restriction, a lot of good and bad foods, a lot of feeling that halo effect whenever I had the salad, and feeling the shame whenever I had the dessert or something like
Mm.
that. And really, it was just a learning process of this kind of a lot of the science behind the complexities of what I would call nourishment. So
Mm.
absolutely, we take in our food, and it's carbs and proteins and fats and micronutrients. But at the same time, there's other elements that we can talk about here in a little bit. But it was just a very slow fade into, and fade's not the right word, to be honest. It was a slow transition
Mhm.
into using food and exercise to manage my body, to make it look a certain way, to instead, I use these words a lot, Susie, but feel and function well. And I've become so passionate about that because women our age, I'm right there in this,
Mhm.
right there with you in the age. I just crossed into the 50
Mhm.
decade. So,
Yeah.
but so many of us grew up with just that feeling that it's, food is the enemy, exercise is only to manage our body. And I'm really just passionate about helping women over 40 feel and function well in simple and grace-filled ways so they can fulfill their purpose. And that's a mouthful. That's a lot we could unpack, but that's kind of where I am, and that's what I do.
Oh, yes, please. I mean, I'm hearing a lot there, and I'm absolutely resonating with a lot, which I'm imagining our listeners to this using exercise and or food as almost a punishment to ourselves. And it
Yes.
really was for me, it really became almost like me against my body at times. I had an eating disorder when I was 16 to 18. And just that's what it was. It was like, okay, well, I'll eat this or I'll restrict in this way, and really this punitive. And while the behaviors, the extreme behaviors of the eating disorder went away, I definitely for the next decade and a half kept the mentality of, not trusting my body, not listening to what my body was saying, and more trying to listen to some of those external food rules. And they say you should be doing this, so you better do this, and your body's not reacting. So it's like it was a very adversarial relationship. Like, come on, body, like they say this should work. Why aren't you,
Right.
that sort of piece? And so I really like it. I like what you're saying from that standpoint, and just also, I guess there are three things. The second thing is the food rules, like what you were going through with your son. And it's like, and us in midlife, like we hear these things, in perimenopause, and it's good to do this with protein and it's good to do that with, and yet I can very quickly, because of conditioning of being a female, get into the like, well, they say do this and don't pay attention that you haven't pooped in 3 days. And like it's like, okay. And use the rules more again as like some external thing outside of me knows better for my
Mhm.
body what is great. And I guess this is 2.5. So that's but that really what we're trying to return to, and what I'm hearing you say with more of an intuitive eating, or an approach of just maturing in our mindset of like, what does it feel, the feel and the function part I like that you're speaking to. So yeah, I'm just throwing a lot at you, but wherever you want to go with that, because I just hearing you talk feels really like a deep exhale to me. Like,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
Don't you wish we had that earlier?
Mhm.
Yeah. I love how you say maturing in our mindset.
Mhm.
That's never been phrased that way, but that's exactly what it is.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, when we have our children or younger children, it's like you just you need them to do what you tell them to do.
Mhm.
We have to be, I mean, that's the goal, right? I
Yeah.
mean, not to the point of squashing their personality or anything like that, obviously. But there are certain things that you need to do. Everybody needs to sit in a circle. In kindergarten, you need to walk in a line when you're going to the restroom. You like, all of that
Right.
kind of stuff. And then as we get older, we do mature. We're able to make our own decisions. But some of us are stuck in these rules that, quote, they say. And I
Mhm.
love how you pull that out.
Mhm.
The other element is they are saying so many different things.
Mhm.
They are in our face 60 seconds at a time
Mhm.
in reels, in
Yeah.
shorts, in TikTok videos, and they are messing with our mind and not letting our own individual unique bodies rule what we need to do, when
Mhm.
we need to eat, how much we need to eat. And it's hard because women are also, many of us are rule followers.
Mhm.
Many of us want to
Yeah.
do
Mhm.
what the science has said or what the research has said, which, by the way, a lot of the nutrition and exercise science that's out there is done on men in their early to mid 20s.
which we are not.
Now,
Oh my
Susie, you
God.
mentioned to
I
me that
never were.
you have five boys. I have a 19-year-old and a 21-year-old.
Yeah.
I can look at this kid, the like look at the 21-year-old, either one of them really. They're both literally a foot taller than I am.
Yeah.
They're bigger than I am. I don't want research being applied to me that's
Yeah.
been done on them. And so
Mm,
what they are saying is not necessarily appropriate, especially in this perimenopause and menopausal phase and
mm,
and beyond. So it's going back to that maturing of the mindset. Yes, we've got to allow ourselves to understand what we need
mm,
more so than what our watch says we need,
mhm.
or if you're using a tracker, what that says, or what any kind of reel says.
Well, and listeners of this show, this is a common theme, different subject, but this idea of looking outside for something, like if we look outside for our confidence, or like if someone says that we're good at something and that's what we're sort of craving and going after, versus inside deciding for us that no, actually, like I'm making the decision. I mean, take you just mentioned kids. Like if I'm looking for my kids to tell me, certainly if my kid was 16 and I'm looking for him to tell me I'm a good mom, like that's a very unhealthy place to look, versus me, he's not going to like my cell phone and my curfew rules and my, whatever, versus me being like, no, and me defining for myself what's helpful. So returning to that inward place. Same with our body, that if we're looking for external, them to tell us, first of all, how it looks, because my body looked pretty good when I was not in the depths of my eating disorder, but more when I was, sort of the whatever approved look. But did it feel good? No. So if I'm looking externally, oh, I look good, how does that, looking outside and being that rule follower, and just instead returning, continuing to return, my dear warrior listeners, to this internal definition for ourselves, what we think a healthy body looks like who gets to decide. We get to decide. Who are the rule, like as rule followers, let's make the rules. Let's decide what is good for, so what feels good to us, maybe not what our watch says, or what our what if we do our food log. I think that's really helpful that you share that about the food information for 20s. I've recently heard that even cardio guidelines were based on a man's heart, which is why they say more cardio and high intense exercise is helpful, because the man's heart needs more of that, whereas the woman's heart does not. So I mean, there's so much here where it's like we can keep looking outside, and as you said, there's 60 seconds of like all sorts of conflicting information, and we're going to feel so confused. Confused is an awful feeling to feel when you're in this, and we're like, what? And then we're also going to feel like we're doing something wrong, versus returning to self. How does it feel to me when I eat protein and produce at every meal? How does it feel to me when I eat a processed sandwich from a takeaway store? How does it feel to me? Like, when I drink a glass of wine, like, uh, to Susie, she says that doesn't feel good, but to me, I don't notice a freaking thing. So have
Mhm.
at it. Like, but I think when we're following all these rules, we lose sight of, or like, we're not able to slow down and actually feel it. At least that's for me. Like if I'm just like, okay, I'm going to have a piece of chocolate cake and I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm sitting and I'm enjoying it, and I'm paying attention, like, how does this taste to me? Great. Oh, okay. And now I'm full, versus me like, oh, okay, I'm having the chocolate cake, but they say I shouldn't have the chocolate cake. So then I'm like scarfing it down and I'm no longer paying attention. It's like, it's really unhelpful. So
Yes, yes, I completely agree. I completely agree because there is absolutely a time for the chocolate cake.
Mhm.
I will never tell anyone, no, you shouldn't have it unless like you're allergic to wheat,
Right.
or
Chocolate.
something like
Let's
that.
not.
And I want to, if I can, I want to go back to a couple points that you made. Number one is this visual assessment of our bodies and assuming something beyond that.
Mhm.
We have had some conversations in my house recently about perception is not reality.
Mhm.
The perception of someone's body size is not the reality of how healthy they are. It does not tell the full story. I used to teach a lot of group fitness. I now more do personal one-on-one, and I'm getting ready to launch an online course. But when I used to have in-person group fitness classes, I had a student who had battled breast
Mhm.
cancer previously. She was in remission and then it came back. I didn't see her for several months and I ran into her at the grocery store. She had dropped probably 20 or 30 pounds on a frame that was already not very big.
Mhm.
And she just kind of gave me a smile and she was like, yeah, she was like, this isn't the way I wanted to lose weight.
Yeah.
I mean, because she was sick, her body was sick.
Mhm.
Walking through an eating disorder
Mhm.
is an unwell body and it's not giving our body the nourishment that it needs. And did you know, or maybe you did, but women in our stage of life have the second highest incidences of eating disorders
Yeah.
because I mean, my body's changed. I don't know about you, but my body's changed and it's hard. It is hard to get around. So, doing this visual assessment of how we look, in fact, I believe so strongly about it that I just have made a blanket rule that I don't comment on people's body.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
if their body size has changed and if they went from one size and now they're smaller, if you will be disappointed from me if you are expecting me to say, you look great, because I
Yeah.
don't know what that means. I
Yeah.
don't know what that means for you to get there.
Yeah. Oh, can
So,
we just pause there for a second? And I just like a challenge to my warrior listeners to possibly stop saying that to your female friends. You look so good. I just recently heard this by Dr. Mindy Pels that she said, she stopped saying this to people like you look so good or you look so great or whatever, and she was more talking about like Botox and our faces and aging and all
mhm,
that. But she said she likes focusing on like, why is she talking to her friends? She's like, oh, you're so fun, or it's so good to see you, or you
yeah,
bring such energy to me when I, and focusing more on that instead of like, because we're sitting here complaining about how we're judged for our body, but then some of the first things out of us well-intentioned people is body talk. So that would just be, I just wanted to pause there that we could start doing that. And I'm definitely aware of it. I'm going to be doing it in 2025, but that sort of like,
yeah.
oh, it's so neat to be in your space.
Yeah, and the influence trickles down as well. I do a
Mhm.
lot of work with teen girls,
Yes.
and I wrote a book for women, and then the women came to me and said, "I need something like this for my daughter." So I wrote something for their daughters,
Yes.
and our daughters are. I mean, I'm a mom of two boys. Full
Mhm.
disclaimer, but I've done a lot of research. Our daughters are watching what we say, and the
Mhm.
biggest impact on how they feel about their bodies are what we say about our bodies and other people's bodies.
Yes.
So if I see you and I say, "Oh, Susie, you look so good," she's catching that. And so
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing. So just as an encouragement to moms of young women
Mhm.
to, and I don't come in here as a know-it-all, and I have, oh my goodness, I have done so many wrong things, but I've
No
learned.
way.
We're all learning.
Yeah.
And
Any
what I
day
have,
is a new day to start. Right.
yes,
Well,
yes.
and I
And
would
so,
also add in there moms of sons, because what I
yes,
have researched is that also, like, if we are so hyper focused on our appearance and they see us doing these things, then we're also reinforcing that a woman's value is in what she looks like. And so we're reinforcing that to our sons. Also, how we interact with other, like with them, if we're commenting on
mhm,
that, I mean, all of that sort of stuff. Like, and so to
yeah.
be the model you want to be. Which also comes back to us being kind to ourselves. So
Yes, yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that's a great point too, because what do we want for our children's? Well, we want them to
right.
feel, good in their bodies and not have unrealistic expectations of their spouse.
So if someone's listening and they're like, yeah, okay, I so have been a rule follower and I so have been confused watching social, like, do I do this? Do I do that? And then, they just throw up their hands and end up with their bag of chips and chocolate
Yeah,
cake,
yeah.
which, how would they get started? Like, how do you suggest people get started tuning into their body's needs when they've been following these external rules for so long?
Well, I think that's a great question. And I love that we're having this time of year
Mhm.
because I think the general story is we are coming out of maybe 4 or 6 weeks or maybe even 10 days of what I call saturation. Maybe
Mhm.
it's a lot of food, maybe it's a lot of beverages or spirits, maybe it is, just a lot of sugar or something like that. And we're ready. We're like, all right, January,
Like sick of ourselves.
resetting,
Yeah.
we're ready to go. What happens for a lot of us is we're like, I'm going to do all the things.
Mhm.
I'm going to get up an hour and a half early and I'm going to work out and then I'm going to meditate and then I'm going to journal and then I'm going to, and then I'm going to
Matcha,
have
and
breakfast
then
or I'm going to fast because
Yeah.
they say I should be
Yeah.
fasting, you
Yeah.
know. And then it just builds on it. And it's like all of the things. What I typically encourage women to do first actually has nothing to do with food and fitness, and that is try to get some quality sleep
Hmm.
because we cannot make good decisions without quality sleep. Now, I totally understand that this is very hard in our age and stage. This
Hmm.
can be very challenging, and some of it is out of our control. Some of it is hormonal related. Some of it is in control. And so then we start to back up and think, okay, well, how can we do that? And maybe it's watching our alcohol intake.
Hmm.
Maybe it is making sure that we're having plenty of nutrients in our foods and our magnesium and all of that kind of stuff. So that I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. But number one, I would say let's do the sleep.
Hmm.
Number two is there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, but I actually have a new coaching client. We're working on food and she has a crazy schedule, like so many of us. And I said, what's the one meal, just one, pick one meal a day where you can maybe put a little more thought and time and effort into having a well-balanced meal.
Hmm.
And for her, that meal is breakfast, which I love because, and I won't get into this unless you want to, but fasting is actually really hard on our bodies, especially in this age and stage.
Yeah.
So we're just working on that right now. We're just working on getting some protein. We're just working on making sure she has enough to
Hmm.
fuel her until lunch because when you have that one meal, then you can build on it.
Hmm.
I think the biggest disservice we can do to ourselves is set up all of these goals and expectations that are unrealistic and unsustainable.
Yeah.
Because if you can't keep doing them, then what's the purpose in doing them now? How
Yeah.
about instead we think about what's something new I could do that I can do indefinitely?
Mm.
Maybe it's, and we've all heard this, right? Like maybe it's drink a little bit more water. Maybe it's adding a vegetable to your meals. Maybe it is making sure that you have a carb, a protein, and a vegetable with every meal,
Mm.
or start with one meal. But
Yeah.
it's the small things and then building on that, which goes against everything of what we want to do because we want it right here, right now, as fast as possible.
Right.
But the quicker the result and the quicker something happens, the faster, and I hate to use this word, but I think the faster we're going to fail. The
Yeah.
faster, the faster the changes are going to go away because they weren't sustainable.
Well, so what I like, and I just heard someone else speak to this, and like I think it's something that I knew as a coach, but just what you're bringing to mind, I just want to really highlight this to the listeners, is that if we can go about our goal in a way that is in the energy and the feeling that we want to live for the rest of our lives,
Right.
it's going to be sustainable versus what a lot of us do because we're rule followers and we're more in that punitive mindset where we're like, you just spent all of December, doing whatever, or you still haven't lost the COVID weight, or, so we're coming from that mean place again. And then we're like, yeah, and you have to do these 14 things all at once in this, like, you're bad energy
Mhm.
versus, when I'm right now in the Love Your Life School, we're doing goal setting and we're doing sort of looking at these things that, frankly, that we might be telling ourselves are treats, but are they really treats? Like they might be treats for that 2 minutes that we're, having that like, oh, release of the dopamine. But is it 2 weeks from now? Are we still like, oh my God, I'm so glad that I've been, eating every night after dinner? Like, is that
Right.
often not? And one of the main things is to get out of this urgency that you're saying. And we're in that urgency when we're feeling like bad girls. When we're like, you've been a bad girl, so you better like, it's
Mhm.
that you better energy versus like, okay, fine, you've got goals, you've got ideas, like you want to be healthier by this time 2026, let's do it. I love getting out a piece of paper and breaking those 17 things down into, 1 month at a time. Okay, this month I'm going to work on being in bed for 8 hours without my phone. Like whether I'm asleep or not, I'll just let the perimenopause gods take care of that. But like I'm gonna be that's January. And then February, I'm gonna be working at getting my, I talk about popping at meals, like protein, olive oil, and produce. Like I'm gonna pop at one of my meals, like Amy says. And then and it's just, I think this isn't our first rodeo. And so one of the things I like doing is like, okay, what have you done in the past? That hasn't worked. So let's
Right.
try doing something differently, talking to ourselves differently, supporting ourselves differently, taking the longer view and
Mhm.
maybe doing it in a way that feels nicer to you. Like, okay, if you don't like starting your morning with vegetables, then don't friggin' tell yourself you're gonna start your morning with vegetables. Just say, no, I'll get my vegetables at another meal. My morning is, eggs and bacon. Great. And then let's pay some attention, sort of back to the question of like, how do we get them in touch with their body? After you've had that eggs and bacon, I like to set an alarm with myself and be like I literally have an alarm that's like, how do you feel if I'm
Mhm.
trying something new? And I'm like, you know what? Good. I feel actually energy. I don't feel shaky. I'm okay. So eggs and bacon is much better than my, intermittent fasting, or it's much better than my yogurt. And I'm not saying everyone should go eat eggs and bacon because then someone's going, bacon is processed. Whatever. We're trying to get into what works for you, and that you're
Right.
a unique little, amazing thing, and to return to that. Um,
Mhm.
so yes, I'm
It's
like, yes, please.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the eggs and bacon. So
Mm,
in the same coaching client we were talking about eggs, and I said to her, for me, like two eggs is a sweet spot. If I have three, it kind of starts to feel a little heavy in my belly. And she came back to me later and she said, I have to tell you that I had to do a little work with myself because I really like four eggs. And so I was feeling bad about myself because you
mm,
said you like two. I'm like, look, that's because our bodies are different, and that's because we need different things. And
yeah.
so absolutely eat the four eggs. And again, I think our brains so quickly go to the comparison and to we're looking for the permission, right? We're looking for the
Mm,
permission to eat the four eggs if that's what we want, because who knows what the rest of the day looks like. And the other thing you mentioned that I want to go back to,
mm,
I have a mentor named Kathy Lip. So she had kind of has two different things. Number one, she does clutter, but then she also helps writers and communicators. So that's where I got to learn about her. And she uses this phrase. So because I want to give her credit.
right.
She uses a phrase called being kind to your future self.
I love that.
So when we are making choices about, what we have after dinner, maybe is that kind to our future self? Maybe, maybe that's what we need because maybe we had dinner at 4 or 5 o'clock and we need a little something so we're not hungry when when we're
Waking up at
sleeping.
two, right?
But
Yeah.
but maybe we don't feel well because maybe we ate something that didn't make our stomach feel well, or our stomach was too full.
Hmm.
I love this phrase of being kind to your future self because this is also how we can start to think about, okay, well, how is breakfast going to treat me at 11 when I don't have time to have lunch until noon, or I have a really important meeting at 3, or something that I need to be mentally engaged in? What does my choice of lunch look like? Because I can tell you that if I go out and get a cheeseburger and fries, which absolutely I will have, my
Hmm.
head and my brain will not be performing at the level that I want it to at
Yeah.
3 versus if I had something that was more balanced, it had more variety, it had more nutrients. And so
Mm,
sometimes if we think about what we want, even if in the near term future, we don't need to be thinking about like our 30-day goals of our body size, but just the near term future and being kind to that future Amy, that can help us tune into what we're needing now because we know it will help us feel better later.
well, and take that future self. I often have people visualize, themselves like I'm 53, so I'm like my 93-year-old self or my 82-year-old. Um, that's, I think, at our age to get more into that feeling of like, what am I doing and how am I supporting that woman, and how am I like, is it really helpful to that, say 60-year-old, even 10 years from now, like 60-year-old me, to be, skipping meals, to be skimping on sleep, to be, not getting like, how fair is that? Um, mhm.
I call those grandma goals.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
I call those grandma goals. And you're so right because this is the age that it's like it's such a prime opportunity to make sure that we are getting that strong foundation of our muscles. If we're not eating enough, guess where our body's taking that energy? It's a lot easier to take it from our muscles than it is from fat, especially if we are exercising.
Mhm.
Um, it is making sure that we're having the proper, enough calcium, enough high impact stuff for our bones.
Mhm.
Because my grandma goal is to be active and to be mobile. And I think everybody wants to be that way. Nobody wants to say, well, I just want to be able to, sit on the
Yeah,
couch
I
and
want to
watch my grandkids,
be
right? I mean, we
totally
all
a
want to move.
vegetable in a chair. No,
Right,
right.
right. And
And
so
so,
yeah, I mean
yeah.
that future self and having those goals and knowing that you don't get there overnight.
Mhm.
Just like I mean nothing happens overnight. I can't
Right,
think
but
of an
that also
example.
brings up your sort of like what did you say her name was? Kathy Lip is saying, and I always say choose your heart. Like in the moment when maybe
Yeah.
we have the craving or the habit or the sugar like addiction of like, oh, I want this after dinner. It is hard to say no and to say, you know what, I actually think having this right now is going to impact my sleep. And it's hard to sit in that craving and just take a couple breaths and do some of the work I've talked about previously or what they can find on your podcast. That's hard, but it's harder to be in a body that we've consistently fed like inflammatory substances or, so our joints are aching, or it's harder when we can't button up our pants that we just got, or when we can't. And so it really is, I find it's the slowing down and really looking at our life and being intentional. It is the beginning of the year, and just and looking at like where are we lying to ourselves? Like where are we saying, even you brought up sleep and you're like, yeah, with sleep, sometimes with hormones, it's like totally, I get that. And yet how many of us are saying that, but then we're up watching another show on Netflix, or we're up, doing another load of laundry, or we're up and it's like, okay, no, that's not hormonal. That's like
Right.
us just self-sabotaging. And let's get ourselves, or with eating, when we're telling ourselves this is a treat and this is really, or that this is something that I need to be social, if it's alcohol, or like can we get on to ourselves for the sake of ourselves? Like we're a big sister to ourselves. Like when you say, I think you'll be fine at the party without alcohol. Like you're a freaking awesome person. Just go. And who cares if you say something weird? You say weirder things when you have that glass of wine. So,
It's so
you know,
true.
but I what I'm hearing from you is more emphasis and validation to shift from this external, what is everyone else thinking? What is everyone else telling me is good for my body? What is everyone, so Amy can eat 2 eggs, but I eat 4. Oh my God, like, am I bad? And shifting from that into an internal where we get to write the rules. So we're following their rules, and Amy says 2 eggs is good, 3, and which I know you're not saying, but for
Mhm.
you
For me.
versus an internal, like actually 4 works really well for me. And that's great. And with everything, with our mindset, like why do we want, why are we doing these things with eating and exercising? Are we still in our 20-year-old brain where we're like, we need to look this certain way and unwrinkled, like, little like Barbie dolls, or like to get our value so that someone outside of us thinks that we're worthy? Or can we shift it to us and be like, you know what? Yeah, my saggy neck shows me that I'm 53, or
Right.
that okay.
Right. Well, and if I could add on to that, you talk about the rules. Let's talk about the quote rules that society has given us about our bodies over the last 50 years. In both of my books, actually, I pulled out, and it was a quote from somewhere else. And I'm so sorry I can't quote the source of it, but basically decade by decade of what the quote ideal body type was. And
Mhm.
it goes from like really thin and boxy to the 20, in the 20s. The 80s are curvy, the 90s are thin and willowy, the 2000s are, a little more athletic. I mean, these rules of how we're supposed to look are ever changing and change within our different cultures as well.
Yes.
I live in the Houston, Texas area. The county that I live in is the fifth most diverse county in the
Mm.
country, and we have all kinds of different cultures. And I did this little survey on a Facebook community group of like, what is considered beautiful in your culture? They all came across differently as well.
Yeah.
And so we have to remember that too, that as a white woman born in the 1970s, my version of ideal is very different than a woman of color who was born in the 1970s. And so externally looking to these rules of how we're supposed to look is only setting us up for failure when instead, when we take care of moving our body in a way that we enjoy, when we put foods in that make us feel good, then our body's going to shake out to where it needs to be. And we can feel good and confident in that because we're living in the body that we were designed to be. As a person of faith, I can say, it's like, how we're created.
Mhm.
But still, like we have these bodies that are all different based off of a million different factors. And
Mhm.
so let's just honor that unique body rather than trying to fit into whatever the rules are. And the rules are very quickly changing right now in the mid
Yeah.
2020s as
Yeah.
well. And so you can't keep up. You can't keep up. So instead, let's be confident in who we are and how we're taking care of ourselves. And then let's worry about other things that matter a little bit more.
And yes, yes to that. Like how much mental space it serves the society really well if women are focused on and spending money on their bodies and their appearance. Like, I mean, that is really, that has been documented. That is something that I don't even need to go into right now, but that is like wasting women's brain space obsessing about how many eggs or whether bacon is good or not is really a waste of why we're here. So that, but what I love about how when you asked, what is beautiful to you, what that showed to me as, the thought coach here is that it's our freaking thoughts. Like, how do we feel beautiful? It's if we think thoughts that make us feel beautiful. And so if I mean, I'm living in Australia now. I used to live on the East Coast of America where it was like friggin' crazy bathing suit season. And now in Australia, I walked like 2 blocks to down to the entrance of the beach in my bathing suit. Total like in when I was in the northeast of the US, I like everyone around me, we'd have like our perfect little bodies and we'd have our swimsuit cover up on and we'd like walk to the edge of the water, drop it, get in, get out, come back, arrange ourselves perfectly. And then here I am, like prancing down in my 53-year-old self just in my bathing suit because I can't be bothered to break a cover, and it's like, yeah, like we get to decide that that's okay. That I get to
Right.
decide. Someone might be like, that is so tacky, Susie. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's not to me. We get to decide. We get to decide what's beautiful. We get to decide. And so I guess what I would just love for people to take away is like, then decide. Let's stop sort of bumping around because we're going to be heavily influenced by everyone else telling us that, oh, now big butts are in and now small, I don't even know what'll come next. Wrists are out. And so you need an implant. Like, let's decide for ourselves what's good. And then also, how do we decide what's good for food? We turn internally again. What
Mhm.
feels good? Does it feel good to eat chocolate cake at every meal? Well, then freaking do that. You have a cool body that needs chocolate cake at every meal. Does it not feel good to eat? Like, I love that messaging from you. So I'm really encouraged by this conversation. Thank you, Amy.
Yes, and I would say just too, as a level of encouragement, if someone's listening, they're like, yes, I want this, it can take time.
Mhm.
And so don't beat yourself up if you start to reverting back to those
It
old
will
thought
take time.
patterns.
Right.
It
Yeah.
will it will take time. And so, I would say, like start following the people who are supporting this message.
Hmm.
Intuitive eating, people who follow intuitive eating, that's a really great place to start. I can provide a list of recommended
Yeah,
um,
I'll put that in the show notes. That'd be awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yes, I will say yes. We can talk about that offline.
Right.
But just kind of be wise. Be wise about the things that are putting in, that you are ingesting, so that way
Hmm.
your brain can be supporting the things that you are wanting to live into.
Hmm.
And I know you know all of this, but just encouragement that yes, it can take some time. It still takes me sometimes. I mean, I still have to go and remind myself of what I have learned and what I know,
Hmm.
but it sure is a beautiful place of freedom.
It's a beautiful place of freedom. And you've just, I hope inspired many people, and they are going to want more Amy. So where can they find you? Tell us all the things. I'll put your social links in that because I love your podcast, and I'll put your Instagram in the show notes. But you mentioned a program, or if they want more Amy, how can they find you?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I do have to say, I have been trying to figure out what's right for me on Instagram. So
Yeah,
I have not been
me too.
posting a lot there. But the best place to find me is gracedhealth.com. It's GRACED health.com. I am also host of the Graced Health podcast. And if anyone is interested, they can get a list of 30 plus non-gym ways to improve your health
Hmm.
over at gracedhealth.com/health. I will say, just because I like for people to know what they're getting into, my podcast covers a lot of conversations about faith. You are welcome no matter what, wherever you are, but just expect that. And the health is really applicable to just about anyone, or that 30 plus ways to improve your health. So those are all science-backed ways, but we forget sometimes that health is more than food and fitness. But those
For
are
sure.
I'm basically Graced Health. People call me Grace online, though my name is Amy. I will respond to Grace.
That's
I
so
just
fun.
prefer Amy.
No, well, yeah, I will put all of that at the show notes. And I was just looking at our number. We're going to be smbwell.com/337. So all of the Gray stuff, all of her books, all of the things. And I am so grateful for you coming on today and sharing this just uplifting message, and really a battle cry I would like us listeners to hear, to return to yourself and your inner wisdom, that it's in there and you do have the answers. We don't need to read or find out something else about something else. Like, the internal guidance is really helpful. So thank you
Yeah,
very
I
much.
feel like we need to like
I
raise
know.
the fist and yeah, battle cry. It's for the
Thank
warriors.
you. Hello, warriors, and thank you so much for listening to the episode, especially until the end here. I just wanted to get on and just share two main takeaways that I really, we have these conversations on the Love Your Life show, and whether it's actually an interview or it's an individual one with me. And I just want to highlight for you the way that you can actually bring some of this information into your life and have it actually change your life, is that we have to understand that thinking and these new ways of being take practice. It is a deliberate practice. So you listen in to things that Amy and I are sharing, and about body confidence, and viewing our bodies differently and thinking of our bodies differently and all that. And we're like, okay, yeah, great. And then we get into real life and we, just sit down and we look at our thigh on the chair or something, and our brain shoots up this negative thought. Okay, that right there, that's the magic moment. When your brain shoots up that habitual negative thought that we've been programmed through our society and through, all the whatever, to think something negative about our thigh, that's the golden moment, warrior. That's when we notice the thought. We're aware that it's just a thought, it's a sentence in our head. And we're like, okay, I could think that negative thought about how big my thigh is, or how it's pressing out on the jeans, or whatever negative that's coming. That's a really, really loud voice. And yet, there's this other way of thinking too. Okay, I can think this other thought. And in the moment, that other thought, that other way of looking at it, like maybe, you just want to think the thought, like, this is what a human thigh looks like, or this is what a thigh of a, fill in your age, like, woman looks like. That's going to feel really hard in the moment. And yet that's how it's done. Okay, in that daily deliberate practice of thinking. All right, that is how we shift it. We don't wait for the shift externally. We make it happen internally. This is all the stuff I coach on in the Love Your Life School. And I have lots of resources in there to help you, get to that place where we then automatically are thinking those thoughts. I automatically now do think the positive thoughts, not the negative ones. That can be, that happens. And yet I just wanted to reinforce in here that takes deliberate thinking. That's my one main takeaway. My second and final main takeaway is that this awareness that we are always spreading something. Okay, we are influencing people, even if it's just the supermarket clerk at wherever. We are influencing people. We are spreading something. And so are we spreading body negativity and fear about growing older and fear in our, oh my God, it's all downhill from here, and looking older, and fear about sagging. And, we can be spreading that. And if we get together with our other warrior friends and we're like, I know, what are we going to do about, whatever, like we're spreading that negativity. We also can spread positivity. Okay. We can spread body acceptance. We can spread radical self-love. Okay. And we can do that in our daily actions. Sometimes this is where we have to act as if. It's like, what would a confident woman who loves her body do? She's going to walk down to the beach without the beach cover up on. Okay. Or she's going to, when a friend says something to her, in the supermarket, and she compliments her on her shirt, instead of saying like, oh no, she's just like, thank you. Okay. We can act as if we're the woman who freaking unconditionally loves our body and spread that positivity. And my battle cry to you, warriors out there today, is that we do both, that we do the deliberate practice thinking to change our behaviors and to change who we actually, like how we're thinking at our fiber, and that we're the ones that are spreading the positivity and the body acceptance and the aging acceptance. And we are like, if it's meant to be, it could be up to me. Let's do it. Let's not just be like, oh my God, there's such negativity around aging. All right, but what's coming out of my mouth? What am I modeling? We are in charge, warriors, in more ways than we realize. And I'm just here cheering you on. Let's go. Big love to you all.